Extraordinary progress. So I'm allowing about an hour and a half for this, as most people want to get off about 6 o'clock. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 topics to try and get through. Some will I expect will take a bit longer than others, but let's perhaps kick off on the big one, which is, I think, cost increases and pricing increases for next year. So perhaps on cost increases so far, what is everybody hearing out there on fertilizer for increases next year? Anybody got any news on that one? All quiet, yeah. So I've heard about 5 to 10%, but that's only an estimate at the moment in time. Nobody else picked up on anything?
I've heard up from 15 to 20%.
Okay, a bit higher, yeah.
I've worked out ours for next year, Tom, and if we were to buy right now, then it'd be a 10% increase.
Yes, okay.
So that's not even a full 12 months, not quite.
No.
If we long we wait, it's only going to go one way.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, we'd be looking at around 15 at the moment if we were to buy any. I'm collecting some data at the moment, as you know, Tom. I'm doing a bit of a talk at the conference, and this is one of the questions I've put out there, just to select companies, just to see, you know, how the industry is finding it. And so, you know, I think from what I can gather is that a lot of the suppliers are a little bit non-committal at the moment, because even they don't really know, I think, until, you know, they can only give a price for now. Will it go up? Will it go down? I don't think anybody, from what I can gather, speaking to people, suppliers, nobody really knows.
Yes, yeah. I mean, when I said 5 to 10 earlier, actually that's on top of a mid-year increase. So in terms of the increase over the year, it's more like 10 to 15 at least. Yeah. Okay. So we're all a bit unknown about fertilizer prices.
So,
okay, I mean,
so if fertilizer is going to continually going up, what strategy do people have to minimize the use of fertilizer? Or is that not possible?
anybody? I think it's quite tricky for us to reduce our fertilizer use. Well,
I suppose one of the strategies that you could use is to work on educating customers about mulch mowing, the benefits of mulch mowing, because you're going to get that N input back as a result of mulch mowing, which enables you to reduce your N input application rates. And, you know, are we taking that into account when we're going applying fertilizer to customers' lawns? You know, are we creating a flag that says this customer mulch mows and therefore reduce your rates?
So are most people using 25 grams per square meter or more or less, or how low do you think you can go?
Really, you should be looking at your N input over the whole year.
yes, whole year.
Not really your grams per meter application rate, because that will be dictated by a number of things, including granule size and concentration of NPK.
What sort of annual application rate of nitrogen are people looking at? I mean, for us, I think it's probably about, when I last looked, about 130 kilos per year.
Yeah, we're lower than that.
Yeah. I mean, we have lowered over time, and there's probably an opportunity to lower a little bit further. Anybody else?
Yeah, shopping around, I had a call from Agravista back in September, and they were looking to get rid of some one of their products, granular, mini granule stuff, of 4-12-12.
Yes.
So I took 170 bags off them. So that's just 4 nitrogen, 12 potash, 12 phosphorus. Gave really, really good results. The colour is great. But I picked it up.
For autumn, Steve.
It was autumn or spring, Ian, yeah. And I picked it up for like £17 a bag plus the VAT. in the current climate, I thought, yeah, we'll have some of that then. So, you know, normally I'm headland through and through, but when I got that call, I thought, yeah, we'll give that a whirl. An interesting an email off Greenbest this morning as well. They're having a bit of a clear out as well. So I think the offers could be there. You know,
I mean, one of the things, I mean, we're doing a similar thing. We're taking in about half our annual fertilizer to mitigate any price increases at the current this year's cost. So that's something people who think about as well. It just gives you a bit of insurance in terms of your costs for the next year going forward.
yeah, I've done the same. I've got half my spring stuff ready. Yeah, for March, it's there. So yeah.
It also depends how much space you got in storage as to how much you can actually take in.
Bit more
Okay, so
extreme for you, Tom. We're having some pallet racking installed to
yes,
really stock up so we can get an extra 6 tons in.
yes, mate. I think it makes them. I think it certainly makes some sense to take a bit of stock in if you can manage it, just to mitigate those what may happen on prices next year. So I'm kind of guessing that we don't know much about price increase in fertilizer. Other major costs, I mean, now, apart from salaries, the other major cost is probably fuel, which seems to be continuing to go up.
Van lease as well. I looked at my van's due for renewal next May. If I renew, the equivalent model is going to cost me, I think it's 34% more.
Yeah.
So van leases seem to have gone through the roof a little bit.
Yeah, we buy our vans and they're probably costing something like 45% more than they were a couple of years ago, which is again a big increase that you need to take into account in all your costings and business plans. Yeah, so lots of cost increases.
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah, Tom, what I'm doing is just so everybody knows, the part of my talk at the conference, well, quite a large part of it is going to look at all these cost rises from fertilizer to fuel to everything, and how we can perhaps just some tips on how maybe we can navigate around these pressing issues. And I am collecting data. I know John Draper's put out an email asking a lot of the questions about these price increases, about as a percentage how businesses have been affected, and I'm getting some really good data in on that, which is helpful. I think it'd be helpful for all our members once everybody can see on average how the industry is being affected across the board. So hopefully by January, well, whenever can't remember what the date of the conference is now. What date is it, Tom?
It's the end of January, 30th and 31st. Yeah.
So by then, I'm in the middle of writing a presentation which will cover all this, and hopefully give everybody some good data. And on the back of that data, hopefully we'll have a few little ideas in there about, well, you know, how perhaps people can make changes to their businesses, or just these little things that might make a big difference in the long term. And as part of that, I think, you know, that it might include a little bit of business restructuring about, you know, how much nutrient you are using, and how you go about your programs. And also, you know, things like stockpiling larger amounts of fertilizer if you can. You know, of course, not everybody can, but so there's lots of little things which might actually might make a bigger difference to your P&Ls at the end of the year. So I will be covering that in some detail in the conference.
Okay, good. In terms of pricing for next year, in terms of price increases, has anybody had many thoughts about what they're going to do next year? Because for us, if I look back for this year, we went up by 7% in January, and then the first time ever we put a mid-year increase of 5% in as well. So we're now looking to see what we're going to do in January, February time. Any thoughts?
Sorry, I can only repeat what I put on the Facebook group the other day, but I'm just looking now if anyone had added anything. looking at so sort of maybe somewhere between 6 and 10% at the minute. But yeah, so I've not settled on anything, but it's going to have to be a similar sort of figures, which is unfortunate because I think to do it once, I think customers are almost going to sort of ride it out maybe a little more freely. To have to go again, obviously inflation's well documented in the news, but you know, we got two choices: you pass it on or you find other ways to make it up. So they're the options. So obviously Ian's already mentioned cross-selling. It depends on which way as an individual business you want to make it up, I guess.
I think there's a few things to consider with the price increases, Tom. And the first is probably to look at where you are against the market. Because if you're already tight, you come into the market as one of the cheaper providers, and therefore you squeezed on your margins anyway. If you've got to see whether you can suck up some of that cost increase without running the risk of customer churn. And then you've got to take a view as to whether there's extra opportunity, whether there's some low hanging fruit, whether there's money left on the table with your existing customers, which is a logical place to go before you start pushing their costs up. We've got to recognize that, people's costs of living are going up, and lawn care is discretionary and a real luxury item. And it also depends on your customer base and where you operate. If you're an operator in some of the areas of the country where penny pinching is a little bit tougher, rates of pay are lower and unemployment rates are higher, and all those other factors, then you've got to take a view. So I don't think there's one size fits all for lawn care companies across the country, or even perhaps in the areas that you're operating in for bigger operators.
Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of that, really. I think this year's price increases are going to depend a lot on what you did last year. So those people that went quite heavy on price increases last year, or maybe they can be a little bit more, they don't have to be quite so strong perhaps this year. We don't know where prices are going to end up. Hopefully the big price hikes that we've seen in the last 18 months on products and running costs, hopefully they'll start to level out. We've sucked up an inflation rate of over 10%. Actually, the inflation rate for our industry is more than that because of our specific costs, which have risen in fertilizer and fuel. So yeah, it depends what you did last year, I think, on what you need to do this year. If you didn't put those prices up enough last year, you're going to have give it a good old hit this year. But so I think, like you say, everybody's going to be a little bit unique in that, and it will matter. It does make a difference about where you live and what the market will take as well. So that would be my opinion.
There's another way of looking at it as well, I suppose, which is, you look at that customer who perhaps is due a price increase, but they're not having their lawns aerated and scarified annually. So all that you're making out of them is from your treatments. And is there an opportunity there to use that as an upsell to the customer, which is, we're going to have to put your price of your treatments up. However, really you should be having your lawns aerated every year, and you're not. If you add that in, then your treatment price increase can be a little slimmer.
Are you saying give a bit of a discount on the aeration?
Not necessarily a discount, Tom, but look at the profit that's coming from that customer. And because there are, as we all know, there's some customers who have nothing other than treatments, or they might, depends on how you package your deals up, really, but they have treatments and aeration, but they never have anything else. And then there's the customers that are choosing a bit more from your smorgasbord, and perhaps therefore you're making a bit of margin out of all of those things that you're delivering to them. So and then look at your customer base and who are your outliers. Are they the ones that really should be paying a bit more of a premium because they are more distant from other customers that you're servicing, and therefore the cost to deal with them and the risk of losing them is less important.
Yeah, we're certainly thinking of offering a bit more discount to those who take up the other services, and that makes sense. I think. Yeah. Martin, down in Kent, you've been very quiet.
I'm sucking it all up.
Any thoughts for next year?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with everything that's been said. We went quite light last year. So I think we can afford to go a bit heavier this year, and we'll probably do over 10%. And we've also thought about the whole aeration thing is, put the aeration in and drop the price accordingly, because, you can make your money that way instead. But I also think it does depend on your client base. We're quite fortunate where most of our clients are going to be unaffected by what's going on, or not as affected. So it's difficult, isn't it? Because when you put price increases up, you want people to push back and say, oh, it's too expensive now, because otherwise you're not pushing the edge all the time. You just don't want that percentage to be too high and too many people go. So I guess it's a bit of trial and error, but you've got to make your money, so you've got to do it.
I think you're right, Martin. You've got to make your money, but you've also really got to ask yourself that question about whether your margin is all in the pricing of your treatment plans, or whether there's other ways that you can ensure that you're not impacting your margin, despite the fact that the cost of materials is going up.
That also depends on whether you sell yourself on price. Because if you're competing on price alone, then it's a race to the bottom. If you can add value in everything you do, then you can justify your price.
Just out of interest, I think it's a good point, Sarah, isn't there, Martin? And just out of interest, then, what price increases tend to affect is growth. Customer growth. Obviously, there's going to be a knock-on. If you're putting up prices, it's getting more expensive. Nobody can afford to be a busy fool, because what's the point in chasing around out there, burning fuel, creating a service when it's unprofitable? You have to make a profit. End of. So for those that have put in decent price increases this year, have you found that it's affected customer growth? Obviously, we would have expected a slowdown anyhow because of the way the economy is. But did anybody who did put up prices by, say, more than 10%, did they see a significant drop-off in growth and churn?
Yeah, I went with a big price increase from the 1st of March, like nudging close to 30%.
Wow.
Just guilty of not putting my prices up for several years, and to be honest, Jim, it was starting to bite me. So I bit the bullet and went with 30% across everything: treatment, scarifying, the lot. The initial fallout, there was some, okay. But I thought, considering with the impact on my turnover, the initial fallout was quite low. However, then we had the scorching hot summer. Now we got the cost of living crisis. So I'm about 30 customers down for the year. So I'm not expecting any growth this year. Funny enough, we put on 2 more today, but so I'm minus 30 or something like that for the year. But my turnover is 30%, a bit less than 30 now, than what it was, an increase there. So I will err on the side of caution. I'm going to increase probably from next March again, but nothing like probably the cost of living or 11%, 12%, but it's something I will look at. But yeah, it was something I was really worried about doing, and to be honest, I thought I was getting away with it until the summer bit, and then the cost of living crisis. So it'd be
really interesting to look at those customer losses though, and analyze them a little bit further and say, what category does that customer fit in? Is it one of those customers that doesn't take any value add services? Are they the customers that are always late to pay? Are they the ones that are often rescheduling visits? And really, because you can view those customers under a lot of different criteria, can't you, about the value that you've lost?
Yeah, to be honest, Ian, it was a mixture of all those things. Some of them I was glad to see the back of. Some of them went out to the market and then came back. So yeah, it's a mixture of all those things, you know. And like, you know, I remember this back in 2008 when we had the credit crunch thing going on in 2008. You know, I lost customers then, and it was just purely a financial thing, really. But you know, you just got to button down the hatches and spend very little money and battle through it. Really, it's all you can do, isn't it? Yeah.
I'd be pleased with that, Steve. If your revenue's 30% up and you're not doing as many customers.
Well, that's what I was thinking, Martin. It's just all right. It's less customers, but more time to spend with the ones that have stayed with us. Create more value. You know, it's,
When your costs are down as well.
It's not a disaster. It's not. You know, it's painful, but you know, it's not a disaster. It's,
I think that's
uncharted water, so to speak, I suppose.
I think that's a great result, isn't it? You know, you've been bold, which you had to be. In hindsight, you would have probably put up your customers, you know, prices by 3 or 4% every year when things were steady, but you didn't. But so you've had to go in at 30%, which was bold, brave, and everything else. But actually, it's worked out really well for you. Everything that you've said makes sense. So it's a good sign that you can do that. And we did a similar thing actually. A couple of years ago, we did some business analysis, and we figured that our customers, which are under 90 square meters, were losing us money. You know, we weren't charging enough for those tiddlers. Time had ticked on, years had gone past, and we hadn't analysed quite hard enough in certain categories. And we did the same. We put those up by 30%, bang, right there. And we hardly lost anybody. I was expecting to lose 30 to 40% of those customers, and we lost a few percent. So it's interesting to show what people will take if they still feel they're getting a good service, isn't it?
Yeah. I think price is subjective, isn't it? It's value that people look at. And I remember I spoke to John about this, that I'm sure there was something on one of the Facebook groups from America, and the guy had done some analysis on his he put his prices up quite considerably, and he looked at his top, he lost about a couple of hundred customers and he put on a couple of hundred, and he did some qualitative research on them, and the ones that he lost said that he was too expensive, and the ones that he gained said that he offered great value. So you know, it's down to finding those people that think you're great value.
Yeah, I would much rather have a smaller profitable business and a larger unprofitable business.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're selling?
Every day.
As much as I love company growth, don't get me wrong, there is a point, and sometimes you may have to put the brakes on, just to remain strong, I think.
We certainly went quite heavy last year with price increase. Well, it was 12%, and we're a company that puts the price up every year. And I think it did have a bit of impact in terms of customer cancellations, I'm sure. But we just felt that it was the right thing to do. But as a result, we got the price increases out of the way last year. So for this spring, we will be going a little bit softer on the price increase. I think probably around the 6% level rather than 10 or 12% level.
There's a timing thing as well, isn't there? I mean, you know, anybody who's using Real Green software, it's at renewals at the end of the year. Then they're prompting you as to whether you want to do price increases. And to me, that ain't the time to be doing price increases. You know, when the days are dark and people are looking outside and they've got Christmas costs and all that other stuff. And, you know, maybe when other lawn care businesses are really busy and not responding to those enquiries from your customers who are, like Steve says, going out to market at the point that they get notified of a price increase, where they're thinking, oh, you know, I've made an inquiry with whoever, you know, and they haven't responded quickly. Maybe I'll stick with who I've got.
Yeah, I basically sat down over the Christmas period last year and just looked at everything and thought, you know, I had to do it. I just had to do it. So communicated it to my customers during January, during our winter cycle, as we call it. by letter, by email, so it was all communicated with the price increase coming into effect from the 1st of March. So they had a couple of months notice that it was on its way. Yeah.
Steve, do you think that helped giving a bit of notice rather than, doing it like, 2 weeks time, your price is going up?
I think so. And the way I worded it, the letter was, thank you for being a loyal customer, blah, 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 the reason for the price increase, what's gone up and how much it gone up by. The last time we increased prices was blah, blah, blah. And most people, apart from the ones that you're probably better off without anyway, were fine with it, But yeah, I think giving a couple of months notice, sort of January, but this is going to happen in March. I think, you need to be proactive. If you're going to do it, be proactive with it and give them as much notice as possible. Yeah, I think that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've always done that, let typically in January, and then with the new season starting in March. So we've tried a different approach last year, and we'll do it the same this year. I think we're just, we're not sending prepays to everybody. We'll do it to the existing prepayers, and we're sending out an email, a nice email to the customers explaining all the good things we're doing and the enhancements, and sort of bearing the price increase in it. No, we're not trying to hide it in the tiny text at the bottom, but we're very transparent. But we find that way we direct people to their online portal, or using the Real Green software. And to be honest, most people don't even probably look at it. So it's always a nerve-wracking time, price increases, especially at the moment. I'm confident in knowing what we should do as a business, but you just think you don't know what's going to happen in the wider economic situation. So if you push it too hard, you could end up losing a lot of customers. And I think once customers have made that emotional choice to say we're going, it's very hard to get them back. Swing them back around quickly. So I think for us, we did 8%. I'm trying to think now. It was 8% last year, or was it 9%? You have to forgive me. Not a huge difference between the two, but I didn't want to go. I think at the time, we were looking at what inflation might have been projected at. And I thought it might get to 10%. Well, obviously, I was wrong. And we did all right with our fertilizer costs. We managed to lock in a good deal, which certainly helped on cash flow kind of things. But I think I'm still working on what we're doing for this year across the board. I haven't come to a decision yet. So it'd be interesting to hear, all these different approaches and so on. But yeah, effectively, we will be putting prices up again. I think, echoing something Martin said, that I think we are targeting higher value customers typically. So it's more about are we showing good value and good results, rather than, it's not an element of can they afford it. Nobody wants to pay more for something if they don't have to. But I think our key demographic customer is someone who's got good disposable income in the first place. So we will see. We just got to be bold, I think, because if you don't make a profit, what's the point?
Okay, shall we move on to which is what is quite linked, I think, cross-selling opportunities at other services. Here, Ian, do you want to lead this one? This is your thinking.
Yeah, so it's about that money on the table thing, really. I put a comment on Facebook today about how difficult this autumn's been about getting around doing treatments, and Russ commented that, it's been a nightmare for hard surface treatments for us. So obviously there's lawn care companies out there that are doing other things, what I would consider to be cross-selling rather than upselling. So for me, upselling would be selling in other lawn care services to existing lawn care customers, whereas cross-selling might be introducing something like beds and border fertilizing or hard surface treatments, or decking, fungicide, algicide, or whatever it might be. I was just curious to understand from people who are on this webinar today as to anybody who had tried any of those cross-selling opportunities and what they'd learned from it, really.
So, well, I can kick off a bit. I think one thing I learned about 4 or 5 years ago now was visiting some companies in the US, and one company in particular on the East Coast. They were about the same size as us in the UK in terms of customer numbers, but their turnover was 3 times as high. and it was pretty much all down to cross-selling, upselling, mainly cross-selling other services. So I definitely came away from that thinking we have to add additional services to what we do. And if you think we've all got customer bases where customers trust us, they're happy to deal with us, they trust our services. So for us to add in additional services to that existing customer base, I think it is something we have to think very seriously about. Anybody else on?
Yeah, I'll chip in very briefly. We have done a bit of hard surface treatments. We moss some residual stuff. I do it because if it scares me spraying that type of stuff around, because you've got a real good chance of killing things. I sound like I don't know what I'm doing, don't I? So, but it concerns me. There's, if you get it wrong, you've knackered something completely. If it oversprayed a lawn or you do it slightly too windy. So I'm not very excited by that. I like the biological element of lawn care. I like growing things, enhancing things, improving soil. I think there's a good market if you want to get into hard surface treatments. I think a lot of customers, you've got the skills, the equipment. You just got to buy, some of the products. But you'll find that it's very difficult to do if you haven't tried it, because it's so weather dependent. You're constantly having to chop and change. You need density in the same way you do for treatments. I find I can be more flexible with the schedule, but if you've got a technician sitting there and then suddenly can't do anything because it's too windy, too wet or whatever, it just becomes a real problem. So for that reason, I'm still on the fence whether I will cancel off those services for next year, or it's either cancel them or grow it. I'm still kind of trying to decide what to do.
I think there's a huge opportunity here. If someone trusts you to look after their lawn, that trust is invaluable, and I think that they're probably, the options you've got are limitless in terms of what they will take from you. It's whether you're brave enough to be able to do it. From anything from fencing to hedge trimming, tree work, anything lawn related or garden related initially, but gutter clearing, window cleaning. We're a service business, and I think there's a huge opportunity to increase customer spend on your services.
I've got a couple of trains of thought on this, and it's interesting cross-selling, isn't it? Because it should be an absolute no-brainer. And of course, in the States, it is a no-brainer because they're out doing lawn care, and it's so easy for them to double or triple their revenue by offering similar services, which are normally things like mosquitoes. Fantastic. It's a perfect fit. You can go there and do the lawn, treat the mosquitoes whilst you're there, double bubble on the money. Fantastic. You can then discount the service that you were doing, so that you're now discounting both services. And then, and also you've got bugs on your trees and your shrubs because of the climate. They have so many pests and problems. It's just a gold mine. Absolutely love it. It's a bit trickier here, actually, for cross-selling, because we don't have too many of those, what I call no-brainer extra services. So what you've got to be a little bit careful of is, and we've tried it, we've done all sorts of cross-sales, and most of them haven't worked, oddly. We did the patio cleaning when we first started up. It should have been simple, but what can happen is it can actually dilute your brand and your service, and it confuses people. So I think when you're cross-selling, you've almost got to create another little micro industry within your business. So it's a bit like the hard surface spraying. The only way you can, I think, that you can really make that work is actually get a lot of customers that want that and have a separate van just doing it with a separate tech, with separate wellies, separate sprayer, separate everything. Because if not, you spend so much time in your round faffing with hard surface treatments that you could have made more money actually not doing it, because it's just a faff, and then you've gone and killed the edge of somebody's lawn. You got to go back and figure it out. So we've all done it. So I think you're right. Cross-selling should be a no-brainer. I think in this country, compared to our American colleagues, it's not actually that simple. They do tree and shrub fertilization because a lot of the time it kind of needs it. It's a different climate. We're a very fertile, wet climate. It doesn't need it as much. So I personally, what I would like to do to cross-sell is almost look at that cross-sell as a separate little micro business within your business, to not dilute the brand, and then see if you can build that cross-sell up to really make it a viable option. And unfortunately, I don't see any UK lawn care companies being that successful at cross-selling, actually. There may be, there's a few people doing it in a small way, but name me one company that's nailing it. I think there is maybe a couple of people that are nailing it, doing the hard surface spraying, but they've got it to that level where they can actually have that dedicated van and tech just doing that. And I think that's the point then where it becomes actually quite profitable. And that's my opinion, but I don't know what anybody else thinks.
Okay. I was just wondering if we could bring in the man on the train here. John, Draper, you able to comment?
He's watching a movie.
He's watching a movie, I think, isn't he? He's not listening to us. Yeah, I know he's done mission services. Yeah, he's definitely watching a movie. Okay.
I would agree with you, Jim, in terms of the brand. I think you definitely have to separate out, because your brand is incredibly valuable. But I think you can do micro brands within and operate as almost as a separate kind of entity. I think you're right.
Yeah, like you've got the database, you've got customers that trust you, okay, but now you've got to get that message across that you're now an expert in something else. So I think you've got to be a little bit careful how you do that, and make sure you are an expert in it before you do it.
Agreed. Anybody else, anything to add on cross-selling or upselling?
Yeah, I just echo what Jim has said, really. We've just stuck to lawn treatments through and through. Where we made some extra money is upselling additional services, additional aeration, getting customers to have their lawn aerated twice a year instead of just once. And, we spent some years building that up and filled in some blank spaces that we used to have in some downtime. But yeah, like Jim says, you can dilute your brand and it's we don't even offer any gardening or grass cutting or anything. We just stick to purely the treatment program that we market and offer our customers. Yeah.
Okay. Shall we move on to? I think we covered that. What about chafer grubs and leather jackets at the moment, which seem to be getting a bit more problematic? Mike, was that?
Yeah.
You raised that?
Yeah. So I've had a lot of problems with chafer grubs this year, and tried nematodes. Doesn't seem to work. Lawns are just being ripped up by birds looking for them, and it's still going on now. And even getting a call today from somebody who's concerned because she's now got birds coming onto her lawn at this time of year, stripping the turf back, finding chafer grubs, and she's not a customer, so I've not actually seen the extent of the damage, but they do seem to be hanging around for a lot longer.
Anybody tried Turf Solve?
Can I jump in on that one?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So I've not used Turf Solve, but I wondered whether anybody has or has an opinion on it, because I did get chatting to the Turf Solve rep or chap at Soltex 3 weeks ago, who told me that pretty confidently that although they can't advertise it in that manner, but they do kill chafer grubs and leather jackets. It also feeds the grass, it deters worms, prevents against disease, and they've also seen it prevent frost forming, so dew dispersant as well. Basically, what he described to me was an all-in-one perfect.
Does it cut the grass as well?
product.
I think they're changing the
taken
name,
back
aren't
to
they,
it.
from turf salt to snake oil?
Yeah, well, after about 5 minutes of explaining this to me, he did turn around and say, "You'd think it was quite unbelievable, but it really does do all of this stuff." So, which obviously naturally you take with a pinch of salt, because if that kind of product does exist, you'd assume everybody on the planet would be using it. So I didn't know whether anybody has used it or has any opinions or thoughts on it.
The question I'd be asking, Will, is what else is it doing that we don't want it to do?
I did ask that. I said, is it damaging or harming anything else other than Schaefer grubs, leather jackets? He said, other than nematodes, which in high populations can be problematic themselves. They're the only three things they affect. Apparently, that's what he said. That's what he gave me. So yeah, it goes without saying, it did feel very much too good to be true.
I think when it comes to these grubs these days, I think you've got to take a pretty kind of holistic view and try as many things as possible. So the nematodes are obviously the sort of standard one now, but I've heard about golf courses trying to increase starling population because they eat quite a lot of the grubs and their beaks are small enough to not to damage the turf. So, you know, that sort of thing, if turf solve's mixed in with it as well, you know, I don't know, I think you've just got to try what you can, if you can, or encourage the client to do it. I always steer clear, thanks to Jim and his knowledge of a few years ago. I very, very rarely charge for treating them because you just can't guarantee the results.
It's a difficult one, that, isn't it? Because when you've got that elderly, you know, we had one this week, 80-year-old chap, wife with Alzheimer's, lawn needs renovating, it's got chafer. We never treat for chafer grubs. We just don't do it, probably for the same reasons that you raised, Martin. Others do, you know, and some of our competitors do. But then how do you communicate? I ended up telling him that we would do it for him, which is like, you know, we look after a lot of lawns, and I think it's the first or the second one that we've done. I just felt bad. I felt sorry for him, asking him to do it himself. You know, that was the problem that we had with it. My view with chafer grubs is that you often don't know you've got them until you get a drought. And it's when the grass has had their roots compromised and they don't have enough storage space for the moisture that they need to keep them alive. And then the rain returns, some patches recover, others don't because of the chafer damage. Then the birds can spot those dead areas, which then helps them identify where the chafers might be, and then that's when the birds come, is my view.
Yeah. We have tried to encourage customers to make sure their lawns are in good condition, really. So with a particular emphasis on getting your thatch levels down, so that if damage does occur, you haven't got a major job to carry out in terms of reseeding the whole thing. If your thatch levels are low, then you can, and you get some chafer for grub or leather jacket damage, you can repair it quite easily and quite cheaply. But if it's pulling up like a carpet, then it's just such an awful job to try and carry out.
I don't know whether it's my imagination. I think I see more of it where it was turf opposed to being seeded.
Are you talking about chafer grubs or leather jackets?
Chafer grubs.
We've seen a lot of leather jackets coming in with new turf. Jim will know a lot more about this than I will, but my opinion on that is that because the crane fly likes to lay its eggs in bare soil, and the turf growers can't apply Merit turf anymore to control the leather jackets, then that turf is coming to site with leather jackets in it.
Yeah, there's two things there, isn't there? I think that leather jackets seem to enjoy laying their eggs, sorry, crane fly seem to enjoy laying their eggs on a manicured lawn. It's obviously nice and tickly or something, but they do tend to go for those nice manicured lawns which are weed free. They do like those shady areas. So newly laid turf, in my experience, is much more prone to a leather jacket infestation, or a fairly new lawn is, or a well manicured lawn is more susceptible than maybe an old lawn when it comes to leather jackets. The opposite can be said for Schaefers. Schaefers love to thrive in old thatchy lawns. So our argument is if your lawn's got Schaefers, it's probably ready. It's probably about time you had a new one. So and so that's that. That's how we approach it. Nematodes. Generally, we don't offer a nematode treatment because there are no guarantees for nematodes. Conditions have to be perfect. We've all been there before. We know what that means. But if somebody's desperate, we will do it for them, but we won't hold any guarantees. We tell them it probably won't work. Turf Solve, don't even get me started on that. I had a right battle with the owner of that Andrew Turnbull. I asked him to prove to me that it works, because if it does work, I'll buy shed loads of the stuff off of him. And he wouldn't put his money where his mouth was. He couldn't give me any scientific evidence that it works on grubs. And when he kept saying that it did, I asked him to provide me with one of his customers that could show me a case study where it did work, and he was unable to do that for me. So, and then he wouldn't contact me after that. He wouldn't get, he stopped communicating with me because he cannot put his money where his mouth is. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a con.
I had a conversation with the scientist behind that at might have been Saltex last year. And asked, like you, Jim, I asked him for what scientific evidence have you got, or case studies or trials or whatever it might be. And the only thing that he could tell me that they thought they had some evidence in was possibly that ground that had been treated with it had chafers that were slightly smaller than ground that hadn't been treated with it.
That's correct. Yeah.
He thought that it was kind of inhibiting their growth a little. And
Yeah.
that to me was just sketchy enough for me to say, well, you know what, if this was my business, the first thing that I would be doing is running some trials and presenting companies like us with the evidence that says, here you go, guys, here's your solution. And I think Green Thumb have adopted it because it's just another thing that they can upsell on.
Yeah, and he's told me that it works great for Green Thumb. And when I asked him to put me in touch with the Green Thumb managers who've been obviously using it to great effect, he was also unable to do that.
So in the golf industry, they're still allowed to use a cell print, which...
Yeah, it's a limited clearance, Mike, for that, for golf, some golf areas, yeah. So it's got an approval, but it's a very particular use, and it's limited amounts as well. They are hoping to extend it to other areas, but I think the chance of getting it in lawn care is probably fairly low.
Do you think it's worth putting forward the view that lawn care companies that are basis assured could be permitted to use it?
I think it's worth some discussion, certainly. Have you got people that you know who have used it, Mike?
No, I've got no knowledge of it other than knowing that the golf industry use it and it's still effective, and it is short-term use, and maybe because of environmental concerns that will be withdrawn at some stage in the future. But there is no alternative, and if it was a real severe problem on golf greens, the power of that organization, that sporting lobby, is quite effective. So, you know, if we're basis lawn assured and we're professionally qualified and approved to apply different pesticides, etc., then this should be a product which is available to the lawn care industry. And I would have
Yeah, I
thought
think-
that's the argument in terms of why we're becoming qualified and following the legislation. It should work in our favour.
Okay, anybody else want to comment on the Celebrin or insecticides?
Yeah, I'd say quickly, I don't like the idea of using it. If we could, I think it's quite a strong chemical, if that's such a layman's phrase for it. I'd be concerned about staff using it. Selective herbicides we're using, probably most of us using are reasonably safe, once they're in the diluted form. The Acceloprin, got a lot more hazards relating to it. There's a lot more hazards relating to the homeowners, anyone using the area. I'm just not really keen on it, and it's more of a broad spectrum as well. It's not just going to kill chafers or leather jackets or something. It kills other beneficial insects as well. And again, nothing's ever really scientifically documented. I think in America they spray it around liberally. They can spray anything, it seems, and no one seems to bother as long as you put a sign up in the yard. I think I wouldn't use any products unless they could give some scientific evidence. Surely get a university like Turfsolve. That's my view. We don't do treatments for chafers or leather jackets, and I found it much easier to kind of come to that decision rather than have this constant dilemma. What do I do? I just say, sorry, can't help you, in the nicest possible way, direct them to getting nematodes.
Okay, shall we quickly move on to wetting agents? I can't remember now who raised wetting agents. Steve, yeah, okay, Steve.
Yeah, just after the we've not got a wetting agent in our program, but after last summer, I think it's something I seriously need to look at. But what I want to try and do is find something that fits in with the program. When can we spray it down, etc., etc. So just some views. Anybody using them? What they're using? Open to suggestions, really. Yeah.
Anybody using wetting agents at the moment?
Yes, we do. It's surprisingly it's given good results, but personally I think we use a granular product. It has more longevity. It's in some ways easier for application on that basis, because you're not having to put down at a very high water rate. You've kind of got technicians and you're trying to calibrate them, and you've got to change nozzles, and knapsack, you've got to fill up the knapsacks twice as many times to get the water rate. So I'm not a fan of the liquids. It's cheaper, but that's what the franchise is doing, like Green Thumb are just putting a liquid down, which I'm not saying it's bad. I think they're using the ICL product, but the granular has the longevity, but the customer will need to water it into the soil profile. And it's not going to work once your lawn's gone brown and toasty too much anyway. You need to really be putting it down earlier in the season, so you're kind of sort of dovetailing when the hot weather comes in. We tell customers there's no point having it if you're not going to be watering regularly. You're wasting your money in the simplest terms. So if there's hosepipe bans and there could be more risk of this happening, maybe there won't really be a place for wetting agents for us. We've used some in spring after some renovations, just to help when it's very dry. You still lack of rainfall in April, but yeah, we do it programmatically, 2 treatments, which covers most of the hot dry period. Limited upsell on it, I'd say, limited uptake rather from customers, because they can't really understand what it is. It's quite hard to explain it. We do have diagrams, illustrations for it, but I think you're better off trying to sell it when you first take on the customer.
Well, how do you price the application of a wetting agent?
We make it higher than a standard treatment cost, but the ideal thing I think would be to make all these upsell services that are granular or something like that, to make it similar price point to your treatments. I think you'd have a much better uptake, but the product's a lot more expensive. So it's just a bit of thumb in the air kind of thing. You just make a price to make sure you're covering your cost. The good thing with applying the granular products is you can do it in pretty much any weather other than a gale. It's great if it's raining, because it will just be washed in a bit more. So I do think we've seen the customers who've used it and have been watering, the lawns are looking better, and they did better through the drought. It's one of these things, unless you did a half lawn treated, half lawn not, how do you know it's the watering that's providing the benefit? So these are things. So again, we do it because I think there's a lot of customers who wanted to know what else can we be doing, but I'm not so convinced, longer term, there's a place in our, in our lawn care businesses for wetting agent treatments.
Yeah, I was thinking more on the lines of including it in what we're already doing. For example, from May onwards, we spray liquid fertilizer, with herbicide mixed in if we need to put herbicide down as well. So I was looking for sort of a 3 hit in one pass, really, a product that we could mix in with what we're already doing and fits with the cycle, that we that we do.
I think you might find an issue with water rate though, to get the for the wetting agent versus selectives. You probably find you'll dilute the selective too much.
Yeah, I've seen 700 to 900 litres a hectare for wetting agents. Yeah, yeah, as opposed to 4 to 6. But yeah. So yeah, I'll carry on. I'll carry on looking and see if we can come up with something.
Can we perhaps? Time is moving on, so just come back onto reviews and referrals, which Ian raised. Is Ian still in the group? Yeah, he's still here somewhere, but he's gone blank. So what are people doing in terms of encouraging reviews in particular? I'm guessing it's Google reviews and other similar reviews. What's working for people?
I did it last year. We invoice using Xero and basically just put some text on every email that went to a customer with the invoice attached that, if they like what we're doing, please spend some time and review us. I think we got about 10, not a massive number, but we've got about 10 5 stars. So and maybe do that again, just ask for them.
I think last year we actually did some market research with our customers and sent them out a small questionnaire, and that gave us, we asked them to review us at the end, and that actually gave us more reviews than anything else we did last year on its own. So you get limited response, but it's a good way of getting it, because those people that are willing to engage with the questionnaire are probably more likely going to be willing to engage giving you a review.
Yes, yeah. We did a similar thing. We've been using for those of you that used Real Green software, there's something called the Net Promoter Score on it, which is basically a ranking that customers can give you. And anybody that's given us a 4 or 5 on the NPS, we ask them to do a Google review, as they're likely to give you a fairly positive review as well. And that has worked quite well in terms of upping our numbers of reviews.
I think another thing you can do is when you engage, technicians engaging with customers personally on the lawn, you can pick up very quickly if they're happy. You might have done a renovation, the lawn, or just the lawn's looking great. Just ask if they would help with a favour and, to leave a review. So we use the condition codes in Real Green software to put the details through. We'll also email them. We say, look, would you mind if we sent you an email just quickly so you've got the links you can click on? And they say, yeah, no problem. The trouble is a lot of people say yes, but getting people to actually do it is a challenge. I reckon we probably get about 70% of people would say they'll do it, but then they don't. And that's the difficulty. But I'd say you've got to keep chipping away. You've got to keep, if you don't ask, you probably won't have hardly any reviews. You just got to keep asking. We've started using Trustpilot in the last 12 months. In addition to Google, we've still got Facebook running there. A lot of people we found would have quite happily left a good review on Google, but they didn't want to create a Google account. So Trustpilot makes it a bit easier. So that's something, maybe to consider if you're not using that.
Jack, I know you're quite active on your reviews.
Ask them. Ask them. Do a good job. Ask them. Face to face just gets better results in my experience. Yeah, obviously there's good ways with emails and communications. I like Martin's as a survey there. Sounds good. But yeah, for us it's largely face to face gets the best uptake. We know when a customer's absolutely delighted. Those ones following renovation, those ones 3, 4, 6 months following some good work, that are absolutely loving it. Good time to get them.
Okay, and referrals, Ian, you raised referrals. Do you want to lead this one?
Well, just that thing really. Is anyone, you know, we've all spoken about it almost until the cows come home about the, you know, everyone should have a referral program and you should reward the referrer and the referee and the, you know, long and short of it is if everybody that we currently have as a customer referred us one customer. So we need one. Imagine the impact that'll make on your business, you know, and all of our customers, you know, well, all right, let's assume 80% of them are happy with what we're doing. You know, must know one person that's got a shit lot, you know.
Yes.
But it doesn't happen like that, does it? I mean, you know, some of you are probably running really, really effective referral programs, and we all know that conversions on referrals are the highest out of any kind of opportunity that we get.
Yeah. I mean, we run a scheme where we give basically some credit on the account to the person referring, and to the same amount is £15 each to the new customer. And we also developed it a little bit more. We've given them options whereby they can donate that referral money to charity if they want to as well. So there's some people didn't particularly want the referral money themselves, but they were very happy to put it into a charity. So we've got a list of something like 8 to 10 charities on that they can donate to, which has worked quite nicely as well. And it's a nice thing to do. At the end of the year, you can say you've raised so much money for the different charities involved. So there's, but I think if anybody hasn't got a referral scheme going, that they should do something that happens automatically. We put it on everything we send out to the customer. But normally a couple of times a year, we're doing an email blast to all the customers saying, would you like to refer somebody, which does generate some referrals as well. So it should be, I think it's one of those things that should be automatic in what you do.
Could I ask a question on those who've tried other than just purely giving credit? Has anyone found it works better if you're saying you're giving like a discount on services? Because there's a danger in, you know, giving a discount, say on the first treatment for the first person coming along, they could take that and then just cancel. You know, we've switched it now to going, we were at £25 for the referrer, but now we're switched to £15 each for the referee this year. And to be honest, I don't think it's made any difference. So I do wonder, you know, if you get 50 quid, would you really get any difference? I think there's people who've got a lot of money, 50 quid's nothing, you know, so people like to refer because they're happy with what you're doing. So I think the best thing you can do for referrals is just give excellent, outstanding customer service, but constantly remind people, you know, that you've got a scheme. But yeah, I just wondered if anyone's found there's, you know, merit in anything different to that approach.
Just a couple of comments on that, Russ, for a second, about if you like your T's and C's around your referral, and then that risk of, you know, you get X for coming on board as a new customer, but then you don't stick around as a new customer, but you've already received X. I mean, you could do back end that. So it's, you know, first treatment is free, but the credit for your first treatment is applied at the end of your 12-month period. You know?
Yeah, we have that for customers who come back and say 50% off a treatment, and but it goes on the last treatment. So yeah, we kind of cover it off that way. Yeah, we've done that before, tried the, you know, free treatment or something like that, but it's you know, not necessarily taking it. But I think people like to help each other, you know, so it's nice. I prefer the approach of offering something to both. That definitely helps. But yeah, I think the key thing is just reminding customers, you know, there is a scheme. So it's just, you don't want customers get annoyed if you give them too many emails. So we know we're still thinking about what we might do for next year. Whether we send out, we're trying to be paperless, but, you know, give them a card in spring, you know, when the lawns are looking better, you know. I don't know. Anyone trying anything different than just emailing and all that kind of stuff?
Well, you could drop a leaflet through every time you visit the lawn, you know, get your technician to push a leaflet through that's got some, you know, refer a friend voucher on it.
Yeah.
I think referrals definitely work, don't they? You know, you get good results from referrals, but the hardest part is keeping your client base engaged and reminded about referrals and that they can actually save money on their lawn care. And that's the hard part. People tend to forget. No matter if you put it on every email, every communication, they don't really read it. and you've got to find inventive ways of just giving them a nudge now and again to say, hey, don't forget, you can refer as many times as what you want. And then when you do nudge, you tend to get a little flurry. So yeah, I think every lawn care business should have a referral scheme. I think it's the best way of growing your business. And it doesn't matter about value. It doesn't matter if it's a tenner or 50 quid. I don't think it makes any difference.
Yeah, I had a question sent in from Russell Langbourne. Is Russell here? There's a Russ I can see, but no screen. The question was, if you're office bound throughout the weeks, months of the winter, how do you manage your time in the office, and what tools have you found useful for organising your time? I've never been short of things to do really for the winter months. Yeah, I think the bigger issue for us is if we get a week of snow. You know, what do we do with the technicians? And what we have done the last couple of years when we had like a week of snow is basically send them all home, and then we do longer hours in the later months to try and catch up. But it can be a real pain. Anybody else? Any thoughts?
What was the question, Tom?
I think it's from Russell. If you're office bound throughout the weeks, months, I think in the winter, he's thinking, how do you manage your time in the office, and what tools have you found useful for organising your time?
How do you manage your time in the office? Okay, so it's not really about what do you do, it's about how you manage it.
Yes, yeah.
I think probably 30, 60, 90-day planning is a good tool for managing that time. We've all got a huge list of things that we need to get through. Commit those things to paper, not paper, but digital paper, you know, and then we capture them whenever they pop in our heads, because as small business owners, we don't have a huge amount of spare resource. So they go on that list. And then you can work out what needs to be done in the next 30, 60 and 90 days and only focus on those things. And then I have a rule of applying what's important and what's urgent, because we've all got a list of really important stuff that we'd like to do, but it's not all urgent. And then when that ticks both the important and the urgent boxes, then that comes up to the top of the list. And also remember to keep a list of the things that you've achieved, because you need a moment in time, whenever that is, at the end of the month or end of a quarter or whatever, where you look at all those things that you would otherwise have forgotten that you've achieved, whatever it might have been, just writing a couple of blog posts, or, you know, rewriting your after service email template, or whatever it might be. And then you can look back on that and remember to pat yourself on the back and not think about all the stuff that you haven't done. But, you know, kind of perk up your own motivation by saying, oh yeah, we got that done and this done and this done as well. You know, we've done really well. Yeah, there's still a long list of stuff that we haven't done, but we've done a lot. So I think that in summary, that kind of 30, 60, 90-day planning or priority planning for when you are in the office.
Very good. A couple of other technical questions. Steve asked about pedestrian seeders. Anybody's found great pedestrian seeders?
Donald Rush.
Donald Rush. No, no. We tried it. We bought an elite seeder, which was quite complex and quite expensive. But the issue with it in the longer term was that in wet weather it didn't work so well. So
I've seen
dry weather, wonderful, but in wet weather, not so good.
Yeah, I've seen
great bit of kit, Tom, as long as you got bone dry, dead flat.
Bone dry conditions, yeah.
It's a big piece of kit, Tom, as well, isn't it?
It was quite, it's quite heavy. Yeah, it would go just about go through a garden gate, but it was quite heavy. Yeah.
I'm just, there was a Klassen product around that seems to have disappeared off the market. But yeah, I just need a pedestrian seed drill machine that actually puts the seed into the ground. I think would be a fantastic thing. There's one called a power seeder made by a company called Mumby. This guy Mumby used to run Black or founded Black.
Okay.
Yeah. I can help you on this one, Steve, if you like. The Mumby machine isn't really suitable for lawn care. We trialed it when Gary bought Gary Mumby. I know Gary quite well, and brilliant bloke, does fantastic machinery, but that seeder was never a lot good for lawn care. Bit too aggressive. It ends up more like a scarifier, unfortunately. So the Klassen machine, we've got that machine. The Klassen works well. I think they still might be available, but they're not very user friendly. They're quite heavy, hard to turn. My guys tend to steer away from them unless it's the last machine in the shed. But we like the Billy Goat, actually. The Billy Goat do a couple of different types of direct drill seeders. Naturally, the most expensive one, the hydrostatic one, is the best one. It's quite a big investment, takes a lot of time. It does take considerable time to get a return on your investment, unfortunately, on those. And parts are not easy to come by if a belt burns out or blades need replacing. But our choice is Billy Goat, and we keep adding them to our fleet. And then once I've done that, then I sort of think about how I'm going to get the money back. So we go from there, really.
What sort of price are they, Jim? Those
Oh my
seeders?
goodness, I think I paid around $5,000 for a
Okay,
machine.
yeah.
I don't know, it's probably gone up like everything since. That's if you can get a Billy Goat machine at the moment. You know, luckily I bought my last few units before the supply chain really got difficult. So, but yeah, so I don't know if there's any in the UK right now. You probably have a bit of a wait for one if you wanted one.
Steve, can I ask you what it is that's leading you to think that you need a seeder in particular?
Well, I haven't got one, and basically after we scarify, we generally overseed. But the germination rate can be really hit and miss, and we find that we have to go back again and maybe apply some top dressing and some more seed again. So it's a couple of visits. Whereas if you get in the seed in direct contact with the soil straight away, your germination rate is going to be so much better.
And have you thought about maybe a different way to skin the cat as to whether you can increase that seed soil contact in another way?
Probably only by scarifying more aggressively, Ian, and customers don't always want that, do they?
How are you applying your seed currently?
We basically put it down with a broadcast spreader after we scarify.
Do you drag mat it or rake it in, or try and incorporate it?
Yeah, it depends. If we top dress, yeah, if we top dress, we scarify off, overseed, then top dress in, level in loot to brush it all in and all that type of stuff. Yeah. So and then sometimes overseed again on top of the dressing as well. So there's plenty of seed going down. But I just got this thing that if it's drilled into the ground, the germination rate will be so much better. Only just thought,
It won't be any worse, but the germination rate might not be directly related to that seed soil contact. It might be other factors. You've probably not got too much of a problem where you are with soil moisture, I wouldn't think. But we don't have any fancy seeders. I've looked at them, I've trialed them. Like Jim says, they're heavy, difficult to maneuver, space in vehicles, etc., etc. And this year we just moved over just to drop spreaders.
Yep.
So, drag mat in afterwards. We always do a lawn renovation inspection. We revisit, and we've got to add a bit more seed, we'll do that. But we're going to go back anyway and check that. So
Yeah,
would you be removing the need to go back and check that renovation anyway, even if you were using an expensive, heavy van occupying seeder?
Don't know, Ian. Don't know. Yeah. Except what you're saying, but yeah, I'm just thinking of double visits, going back with some more dressing, some more seed, and if we could eradicate that, then that's one less visit. But that's
okay. Just link to that. Somebody raised a question about winter seeding. Sorry, Russell, do you want to add a point?
Yeah, I'd add a really quick point on that. I've had the Billy Goat hydrostatic seeder for the last couple of years and really like it. You get very good results with it compared to, direct drilling in makes a big difference to germination. We've got some excellent results this autumn from using it in particular with all that rain that came down. It helps if you haven't scarified quite enough, or in the sense, you don't want to go super hard, but it can actually cut through. There's a little bit of subsurface that's left, so you can get into the soil a bit more. You need 85 centimeters width clearance for gates, so it's not great for a lot of properties. But where I like using it is where you've got a slightly bigger lawn. If you go back, you've got a 50 square meter lawn and you get a few bits that didn't work, you can very easily and quite cheaply just patch it up. But if you've got a big lawn, it's a lot of work to go back and have to do it all again. So I'm a big fan of them. I really like it. I like it. I've tried a couple of other machines, but this is one I settled on that I felt was good. I think Echo Gym spares are a bit of a pain in the rear end, but I've bought in a load of spares preemptively, belts, cables. So when something goes, you don't have too much downtime. But it's a good machine, very, very solid.
Okay, thanks, Russell.
One thing I would just add, though, Steve, is it's not the same service. You cannot be out direct drill seeding for the same price that you broadcast seed for. It's more laborious. The machinery is expensive. I would suggest, you need to, we charge considerably more for a direct drill over seed than we would a broadcast over seed.
Of course.
So, you've got to think about your business model, and do I want to expand my business model to offer that service or not, before you sort of take the plunge, I would say.
Thanks, Jim.
Okay, winter seeding. I think, Mike, was it you?
Yeah,
Asking
I'm
with
just
seeding?
curious as to how late people are going with seeding and the type of seed they're using and how successful they find it, and whether certainly this November it's been wet enough, but it's almost been too wet and the seed's almost drowned in some cases.
This isn't something that I do, but it is something I've considered. I spoke to a couple of seed suppliers at Soltex about sort of seed that germinates throughout the winter. I know there are some varieties out there more designed for sports turf, I believe, so sort of patching up goal mouths and bare areas on sports pitches, but I didn't know whether anybody else does this in a lawn care sense. I believe a lot of those kind of mixes might contain annual meadow grass, so they are a temporary kind of thing. So I was debating whether to, if people are really disappointed with a thin and patchy lawn throughout the winter, whether we could tackle it with that kind of mix over the winter and just explain that it would need doing again in the spring. I didn't know whether that'd be a waste of time or whether that's the kind of thing that anybody else might be doing as well.
So the issue isn't, Sandra, thanks for your question. The issue isn't whether it's winter or autumn or spring. The issue is what temperature's the soil at and how much moisture is there and what seed blend are you putting down.
So some of the ryegrasses will germinate down to 6 degrees now. So soil temperatures are still quite high. So I'm almost of the opinion that the season for putting seed in is much longer than it ever used to be. And probably you could even put seed down in the next couple of weeks and probably get a germination. My only concern about it is whether the grass will actually survive if it doesn't really get established.
So as long as the seed is germinated, once that seed absorbs moisture and it releases the enzyme to break down the seed coating and that germination begins, if at that point the temperature drops too low or there's no moisture available, then that germination will fail. I would much rather put seed down late in the year than a early spring renovation, than a spring renovation to some extent. Yeah. You know, because the soil, even though the air temperature is dropping, the soil will retain its temperature for a reasonable amount of time. So really what you want to be doing is taking account of what the soil temperature is likely to be and what the rainfall is, to see what your germination rate is going to be like. And all you're aiming for is just that cotyledon, that tiny little seed leaf, just to come out of that seed casing, and that seed will sit dormant all winter. That new grass plant will sit dormant all winter. You get a mild day, nice bit of sunshine, and it's growing a little tiny bit and getting that taproot down even further. Come the spring, it's going to rocket away. I mean, the last lawn renovation, full lawn renovation that we did last year was the 5th of December. I don't know what the temperatures were. I didn't keep a record of it. We've got the last one of this autumn coming up next week, just because somebody wanted us to squeeze it in for them. And actually, given the conditions, I would rather do it now than push it into the spring, because I think it will recover quicker in the spring with seed sown now than it would recover in the spring with seed sown in the spring. And you can always patch up a little bit in the spring if you need to, but you're getting it off to a start now.
So I've been quite happy through this autumn and even now to do small areas where it struggled through the summer and there's patches to repair, but I'm not sure I would have the confidence to do a large area. So the lawn you're about to do, is that small or large or?
Well, I think the consideration is what's the customer hoping for and how quickly, and what's the risk of doing that in the spring versus doing that now. And really the thing that limits us now is the lawn conditions being too wet to put heavy equipment on it without making a mess. But you know, you think about that lawn in the spring, it's spent all winter cooling down, that soil's cold, and it's going to take a long time for that soil to warm up. And you're putting seed onto cold soil and wet weather, and you know that there's a chance that that seed just rots out.
Yeah.
Okay. We're coming up to 6 o'clock now, 5 to 6. I think we had one last subject I haven't ticked off yet is, I think from Ian again, offers that work. Ian, what were you thinking of then in particular?
We're all thinking about how we can draw in new customers, or how we might be able to upsell to existing customers. And I was just wondering whether anybody had any nuggets that they wanted to share of stuff that they tried, you know, that they thought were nice little offers, didn't cost as much as a business, and had worked to pull customers in. So just kind of as a starter for 10, it might be, you know, whenever we scarify a lawn, we always give it a moss treatment afterwards. You know, moss treatment doesn't take a huge amount of time, and it's not necessarily an expensive product, you know, so throwing in or hiding the cost of the moss treatment in the scarification and offering it as a, you know, free moss treatment with scarification is quite a nice little hook for some people. You know, has anybody got anything else that they have found works nicely as an offer?
Anybody want to come in on that one?
I seem to have a free offer at the moment, which is leaf blowing.
That's a whole other question, yes.
Unfortunately, yeah, gaining the attention of new customers is never easy, and business growth at the moment is very difficult. I wish there was a golden bullet or a golden nugget, or whatever you want to call it. If anybody knows it, answers on a postcard, it'd be gratefully appreciated, because I don't think there is an easy way. I think everything's tough. You just got to dip your toe in the water and try lots of different things, and then look at the data. You know what worked. You know, how much did that cost me per acquisition? Should I do it again? Was it timing? You know, when you did it. So there's so many variables to having a successful marketing campaign. Unfortunately, there's no golden nugget that I'm aware of.
I think there are things that you should definitely do. Referrals, you should definitely have a referral system in place because it does work. And you should definitely go back and look at your councils and your given estimates and go back to them once or twice a year and see if they want to take your services up and either restart or start for a first time, because that data is quite valuable and is definitely worth mining on a regular basis. So, and there are certainly those things you just need to plan into your yearly schedule and make sure they happen. And then for the rest of it, it's like Jim says. I think you're doing a range of different things, but you need to measure them all the time to make sure you're getting a good cost per customer out of it. And some things will work quite well. A lot of things won't work well at all. And you're selecting out those methods. But yeah, go ahead and do them, but measure it so you know where you should be spending your money going forward. Maybe has anybody want to raise any last questions before we all sign off? Go and have something to eat.
Just got a comment to make on Sandra's thing about leaf blowing.
Yeah.
Briefly, it's a tough one. It really is a tough one about leaf blowing, and it's about how you're teaching your customers to behave as well. Because if the customer knows that when the lawn guy comes to do his autumn treatment, he'll deal with the leaves on the lawn, are you teaching your customer that that's okay for them to leave those leaves on the lawn for you to deal with? Now, that might be okay because you might be charging the customer enough for you to justify actually blowing the leaves off the lawn because you kind of built it into that pricing. Or if they're on tight margins, as I've learned from some of those Lawn Right customers that I've got now, who behave badly and expect the earth, should you really be blowing the leaves off the lawn for them? What's the cost of you revisiting those lawns if your technician turns up and you take a view that there's too many leaves to treat the lawn, and you've got a failed visit to deal with and the time taken to reschedule that. But likewise, technicians need paying, blowers need petrol in them and servicing and replacing, and if you're turning up and you've got everybody's lawn's got lots of leaves on it, then what's that doing to your schedule for the day as well?
So I now tell customers that if I've got to clear the leaves, I'm going to charge them. And it depends on the customer and the size of the lawn. And also when I'm looking at the customer in the first instance, I'm looking at the trees in the area and the likelihood of having a heavy leaf. And with most customers, even those that do try, I mean, some of them make the effort, but throughout November, we've had winds, gales, and they can clear them off one day and they're there the next day. So, you've got to take each customer as they come and see what the best option is.
Well, one thing we do is particularly any large lawns that we know are problems, we just schedule them later after the leaves have fallen down, or you can schedule them earlier and do them before the leaves fall. So avoiding the big issue really, because we know they're pretty difficult for the customers to clear as well. And they have perhaps a regular schedule with their gardener will only go then clear them once every couple of weeks.
I think also educating the customer because they just don't appreciate the damage that the leaves can do to the lawn. So, and I say to them, well, you're spending all this money after the lawn care, but if you don't keep the leaves off, then it's a backward step.
Yeah.
It's important to document it. We'll always make sure that the customer's made well aware that the leaves could be starting to cause damage or have caused damage. It's a good point of reference because you can guarantee later in spring when the lawn's patchy and not growing quite as well, they go, well, why am I paying you all this money? You get it, we try and cover the eventual possible moan in the future, but we just suck it up and go, look, tell you what, some lawns we will just turn around and say no, we'll reschedule it. I think we do a case-by-case scenario. I spent 2 hours clearing some leaves off a massive lawn a couple of weeks ago. He pays good money, and I thought, well, what else am I going to do with the time, and I thought it's better to just do it. I think you just have to accept it's part of what we have. If you don't live anywhere with trees, great, but if you do, you're just going to have to blow a few leaves around and just have to educate your techs so they don't get disenchanted with it too, and just say just got to do it.
I had a lady phone up yesterday who said Can I just check whether the technician's coming tomorrow or not? Because this is the third attempted visit because of weather. And I have to set my alarm for 5 a.m. to get up in the morning to clear the leaves before the technician comes to make sure there's no leaves on the lawn. Bless her.
Good customer.
Bless her.
Wow.
Yeah.
You should
So
send
we
us,
sent a communication out to all customers this year. We haven't done it before, saying we really want your lawns to look great. Leaves on your lawns mean that they probably won't look great if they're left there any reasonable amount of time. We do carry blowers. We can blow leaves from lawns, but that takes time and costs us money. So there will be a charge for it. If you don't want us to blow the leaves from your lawn and you want us to proceed with treatments without having blown them off, please contact us and let us know that you don't want any charged for leaf blowing. And then we put a condition code on the customer's account, you know, saying a flag on there, sorry, saying no paid for leaf blowing. So then when the technician turns up, he takes a view as to whether he can treat the lawn or if there's just too many leaves and then it has to be rescheduled.
Have you had knockback? How's it gone with the customers from charging? for that?
We got maybe perhaps about 10 to 15% of customers who responded to say, I don't want to pay you for leaf blowing. Please don't blow the leaves off my lawn. And then others, nothing. And of those messages that went out, I think 78% of them were opened.
How many did you charge, Ian? For leaf
We set
blowing?
up a price chart for it, Tom, and I think we did it at half the price of the regular treatment.
Yeah. And how many of, or what percentage of your customers did you actually end up charging?
We're still working through autumn treatments at the moment.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I haven't run a report on it. I've seen it coming in because, you know, when we check the debtor list, some people are on different, you know, they might be paying by go cardless or something like that. But then we've got to put that charge through separately because they're not on auto pay or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So, you know, we are generating extra revenue from blowing leaves off lawns, which is a long and short of it, which actually isn't a bad thing because normally we just blow them off anyway. There's an upsell for you.
There's an upsell. Yes, absolutely. Okay. Okay. Any other burning issues? Otherwise, we'll call it an evening and let everybody get on. No?
No, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your participation. Been a good session. Maybe we haven't got anything scheduled in terms of another session like this, but I think it could be useful to run another one either before Christmas or just after. But anyway, have a good evening, everybody, and thanks again for your participation.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers, bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye.